The sky above Earth burned orange and red. Giant ships from the Empire floated in the clouds like dark mountains. For 3 years, humanity had fought against them. For 3 years, humans had lost. Stood in the ruins of what used to be Seoul. He was 30 years old, tall and thin, with tired eyes that had seen too much death. His military uniform was torn and dirty. Around him, other soldiers sat quietly. They all knew the truth. The war was over. Humanity had lost. "They want to talk," said General Park, walking toward. The old man looked broken. They sent a message. They want peace. Laughed, but there was no happiness in it. Peace, after they killed billions of us. "They have conditions," the general continued. His voice was heavy. "Strange conditions." That night learned what those conditions were. The emperor had 4 daughters. The youngest one needed a husband, and that husband had to be human. "Why?" asked the council of leaders who had gathered in an underground bunker. "Why would they want one of us?" A scientist named Doctor stepped forward. She was young, with short black hair and glasses. "We don't fully understand their culture," she said. "But from what we know, marriage in the Empire is about power and alliances. The youngest princess, she is considered weak among her people. Perhaps they see this as a way to insult her further. Give her a human husband from a defeated race. So they want to humiliate us and her at the same time," said another leader. "Yes," Doctor nodded. "But if we refuse, they will destroy what remains of Earth." The room fell silent. Outside, millions of people lived in fear, hiding in shelters, waiting to die. Children cried for food. Families had been torn apart. If this marriage could save them, did they have any choice? "We need a volunteer," General Park said slowly. "Someone willing to go to their world, someone willing to marry this princess." No one spoke. The idea was terrifying. Going alone to an alien planet, surrounded by beings who had killed so many humans. It was like walking into a cage full of hungry animals. Closed his eyes, he thought about his family. His mother had died in the first attack. His father had died fighting. His younger sister had disappeared during the bombing of. He had nothing left. No home, no family, no reason to keep living except for duty. "I'll go," he said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "I have no one left," explained. "If my life can save others, then let me be useful for once." General Park stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "You're a brave man." "No," replied, "I'm just tired." 3 days later stood on a platform as a small ship landed in front of him. The wind from its engines pushed against his face. He wore simple clothes, black pants, and a white shirt. The leaders had told him to look clean but humble. "Do not anger them," they had said. "Do whatever they ask." The ship opened and 2 soldiers stepped out. They were tall, almost 7 feet, with pale blue skin and silver eyes. Their bodies were thin but strong, like dancers made of steel. They looked at like he was an insect. "Human," one of them said. His voice was cold. "You are the offering." Felt anger rise in his chest, but he pushed it down. "Yes," he said. I am here for the marriage." The soldiers looked at each other. One of them made a sound that might have been laughter. "Small," he said. "Weak. The princess will be disappointed." They grabbed his arms and pulled him into the ship. Inside, everything was white and silver. The seats were too big for him. The air smelled strange, like flowers and metal mixed together. As the ship lifted off the ground, looked out the window. He saw Earth getting smaller and smaller. The blue and green planet that was his home. The place where he had been born, where he had laughed and cried and loved. He might never see it again. "Goodbye," he whispered. The journey took 10 days. The soldiers did not speak to him. They gave him food and water, but nothing else. Spent most of his time sitting alone, thinking about what waited for him. What would the princess be like? Would she be cruel? Would she hate him? They were known for looking down on other races. To them, humans were primitive creatures, barely worth noticing. This princess was probably disgusted by the idea of marrying him. On the 10th day, the ship arrived looked out the window and gasped. The planet was beautiful. Purple forests covered the land. Silver rivers flowed between mountains that touched the clouds. Great cities of crystal and light spread across the surface. "This is Prime," one of the soldiers said. "Home of the Empire. You will live here now, human, if you survive." The ship landed in front of an enormous palace. It was made of white stone that seemed to glow from inside. Thousands of people stood watching as was led out of the ship. They whispered to each other. Some of them pointed at him and laughed. Kept his head high. He would not let them see his fear. Inside the palace, he was taken to a great hall where the emperor sat on a throne of gold. The emperor was old, with dark blue skin and eyes that burned like stars. Around him stood his advisors and guards. "So this is the human," the emperor said. His voice echoed through the hall. "This is the creature who will marry my daughter." "Yes, your majesty," said he, bowed even though it hurt his pride. "I am of Earth." The emperor studied him for a long moment. "You are smaller than I expected, weaker, but perhaps that is fitting for." Some of the advisors laughed at this. "The wedding will be tomorrow," the emperor continued. "Tonight you will meet your bride. Try not to disappoint her too much." Was taken to a small room and left alone. He sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Tomorrow he would marry an alien princess. Tomorrow his old life would end completely. He did not know that this marriage would change everything, not just for him, but for both their worlds. That night could not sleep. He lay on the large bed in his small room, staring at the ceiling. The room was cold and empty. No pictures on the walls, no warm blankets, just white stone and silence. A knock came at the door. Sat up quickly. "Come in," he said. The door opened and a young woman stepped inside. She was different from the others he had seen. Her skin was lighter blue, almost like the morning sky. Her eyes were soft purple instead of the cold silver of the soldiers. She was shorter than most, only a little taller than himself. She wore a simple gray dress. No jewelry, no gold, nothing that showed she was royalty. "You are?" she asked. Her voice was quiet and gentle. "Yes," he said, standing up. "And you are?" "I am," she said, "the princess you will marry tomorrow." Stared at her. This was not what he had expected. He had imagined someone proud and cruel, someone who would look at him with disgust, but seemed nervous, almost scared. "I wanted to meet you before the ceremony," she said, "to warn you." "Warn me about what?" Looked at the floor. "About me, about what this marriage means." She paused. "My father gave me to you as an insult to both of us. In our culture I am considered worthless, weak, a failure." Was confused. "Why, you're a princess." "Being born to the emperor does not make you valued," explained. "My 3 older sisters are warriors. They are strong, fierce, and cold. They have conquered planets and led armies. But she touched her chest. "I feel things. I care about others. In the Empire, this is seen as a sickness." "Caring about others is a sickness?" asked. "Yes, we are taught that emotions make us weak, that love and kindness are for lesser races." She finally looked up at him. "Races like yours." Understood now. The emperor had matched his weakest daughter with what he saw as the weakest race. 2 failures put together as a joke. "Do you hate humans?" asked directly. Shook her head. "No, I have studied your people. I have read your stories and listened to your music. I think humans are beautiful. You feel so deeply. You love so strongly. Even when you suffer, you keep hopping." Her eyes became wet. "I have always wished I could be more like that." Something changed in his heart at that moment. He had come here expecting an enemy. Instead, he found someone lonely and lost, just like him. "May I sit?" he asked, pointing to a chair. Looked surprised. "You want me to stay?" "Yes, I would like to talk to my future wife." They sat together in that cold room and talked for hours, told him about her life in the palace, how her sisters had always mocked her, how her father had ignored her, how she had spent most of her time alone, reading about other worlds. "I used to dream of running away," she admitted, "going to some distant planet where no one knew me, where I could just be myself." Told her about Earth, about the green forests and blue oceans, about his mother's cooking and his father's laughter, about his sister who used to sing in the mornings. "They're all gone now," he said quietly. "The war took everything from me." Reached out and touched his hand. Her skin was cool like water. "I am sorry," she said. "I am sorry for what my people did to yours." Looked at her hand on his. No had ever apologized to him before. No had ever touched him with gentleness. "It wasn't your choice," he said. "You didn't start the war." "No, but I did nothing to stop it either. I was too weak, too scared." "You're not weak," said firmly. "Being kind doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong in a different way." Smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, uncertain and fragile, but it was real. "You are strange, human," she said. "You should hate me. You should want to hurt me, but instead you offer me comfort." "Why would I hurt you? You haven't done anything wrong." "In the Empire, people hurt others because they can, because it makes them feel powerful." Stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the twin moons of Prime shone in the night sky. "Tomorrow, we will be married. The whole Empire will watch and laugh at us. They will call us the union of two weaklings. Are you ready for that?" Joined her at the window. "I've been laughed at before. I've been called weak before. It doesn't bother me anymore." "Why not?" "Because I know what real strength is," he said. "Real strength is not about how hard you can hit or how many people you can kill. Real strength is about getting up after you fall. It's about caring for others even when it hurts. It's about hope." Turned to look at him. Her purple eyes studied his face. "The humans we captured during the war, they were like that. Even when they were dying, they would try to save each other. Our soldiers couldn't understand it. They called it madness." "Maybe it is madness," agreed. "But it's our madness. It's what makes us human." They stood in silence for a while, watching the moons move slowly across the sky. Said finally, "I know this marriage is forced. I know you didn't choose this, but I want you to know. I will try to be a good wife to you. I will not hurt you or betray you. I promise." Nodded, "And I promise to be a good husband to you, whatever that means in this strange situation." Laughed softly. It was a beautiful sound, light and musical. "We are both lost, aren't we? Both thrown into something we don't understand." "Yes," said, "but maybe we can be lost together." Before she left, gave him one last look. There was something new in her eyes, something that might have been hope. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for being kind." After she was gone, sat alone again. But the room didn't feel as cold anymore. Tomorrow, he would marry a princess from another world, but tonight he had made a friend. And in this strange place, surrounded by enemies, that felt like a miracle. The wedding ceremony was exactly as had predicted. Thousands have gathered to watch. The emperor sat on his throne, looking bored. Sisters stood nearby, whispering and laughing among themselves. Wore white robes that the servants had given him. Wore silver, but it was plain and simple compared to what her sisters wore. When the ceremony ended, no one cheered. The emperor simply nodded and waved his hand. That was it. They were married. As they walked out of the great hall together, heard someone say, "Look at them. The weakling princess and her pet human. What a joke." He felt his hand tighten on his arm. She was trembling. Leaned close and whispered, "Ignore them." "I'm trying," she whispered back. "One day," he said quietly, "they will see how wrong they were about you, about both of us." Didn't answer, but she held his hand a little as they walked into their new life together. 3 months passed since the wedding, and lived in a small wing of the palace, far from the emperor and his court. It was quiet there, peaceful, almost like a prison, but a comfortable one. Every morning would bring breakfast. It was a simple thing, but it surprised the servants. A princess serving a human, unthinkable, but didn't care what they thought. "You should let the servants do this," said one morning. "I want to do it," replied. "It makes me happy." That word again, happy. Notice that used it more often now. She smiled more too, small changes but real ones. In the afternoons they would walk in the palace gardens. The gardens were beautiful, full of flowers that glowed different colors and trees that sang in the wind, knew the name of every plant. She had spent years studying them alone while her sisters trained for war. "This one is called a," she said, pointing to a silver flower. "It only opens at night. My mother loved these." "Your mother?" "She died when I was young. She was, like me, too gentle for this world," touched the flower softly. "My father never forgave her for being weak, and he never forgave me for being like her." Picked one of the flowers and put it in his hair. She blushed, her blue skin turning slightly purple. "What are you doing?" she asked. "On Earth, we give flowers to people we care about," he explained. "It's a way of saying you are beautiful to me." Touched the flower in her hair. "Nobody has ever given me a flower before." "Then I'll give you one every day." And he did. Every day would find a new flower and give it to. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she cried. But always she kept the flowers in a vase by her bed. The servants began to talk. The guards began to watch them differently. This human was not acting like a slave or a prisoner. He was acting like a husband who loved his wife. One evening, a messenger came from the emperor, and were ordered to attend a dinner with the royal family. It was the first time they had been invited anywhere since the wedding. "This is not good," said, her face pale. "My father only calls for me when he wants to embarrass me." "Then we will be embarrassed together," said, "and we will survive it together." The dinner was held in the great hall. The emperor sat at the head of a long table. His three sisters sat nearby, beautiful and cold like statues made of ice. Various lords and ladies of the court filled the other seats, and were placed at the far end of the table, as far from the emperor as possible. "So," said the eldest sister, whose name was, "how is married life, little sister? Is your human pet treating you well?" Laughter rippled through the hall. "He is," said quietly, "very well." "How sweet," continued. "Tell me, human, what is it like to be married to the weakest princess in the empire? Do you feel like a king now?" Looked it calmly. "I feel like the luckiest man alive." The laughter stopped. People stared at him. "Your sister is kind, intelligent, and beautiful," continued. "She has taught me about your world, your history, your culture. She has treated me with respect and care. If that is weakness, then I wish the whole universe was weak." Silence filled the hall. The emperor leaned forward, studying with new interest. His face twisted with anger. "You dare speak to me like that? You are nothing, a creature from a defeated planet. You should be grateful we let you live." "I am grateful," said. "Grateful for every moment I spend with. Grateful that I get to know someone so wonderful." Grabbed his hand under the table. She was shaking. But when he looked at her, he saw something new in her eyes, pride. The dinner continued, but the mood had changed. People kept looking at and whispering. Some of them looked confused, others looked angry, but a few, just a few, looked curious. That night, back in their room, couldn't stop packing. "You shouldn't have said those things," she said. "It's dangerous. She could have you killed." "I know," said, "but I couldn't just sit there and let her insult you." Why do you defend me like that? You barely know me." Took her hands in his. "Because someone should. Because you deserve to be defended. You've spent your whole life being told you're worthless, but it's not true. You are worth more than all your sisters combined." Tears rolled down his cheeks. "How can you say that? You've seen how my people treat you, how they treat humans. How can you still be so kind?" "Because kindness is not about what others deserve," said. "It's about who I choose to be. The war took everything from me, my family, my home, my world. But it can't take my heart. That's something I control. That's something they can never destroy." Fell into his arms and cried. She cried for years of loneliness. She cried for all the times she had been mocked and ignored. She cried for the mother she had lost and the father who never loved her and held her through it all. In the days that followed, something changed between them. They were no longer just two people forced together by politics. They were partners, friends, perhaps something more. Began to stand taller. She spoke louder. When servants made rude comments about, she stopped them. "He is my husband," she said firmly. "You will treat him with respect." The servants were shocked. The quiet princess who never spoke up was suddenly defending a human. Impossible. But saw it differently. Wasn't becoming someone new. She was finally becoming herself. "You taught me something important," she told him one night. "You taught me that my feelings are not a weakness. They are my strength. My whole life I tried to hide them. I tried to be cold like my sisters, but that's not who I am." "No," agreed, "it's not, and that's a good thing. On Earth are there many people like you, people who believe in kindness and hope." Smiled sadly. "There were before the war, I hope there still are." Took his hand. "Then maybe humans are not the weak race everyone thinks they are. Maybe your strength is just different, hidden, like mine was." "Maybe," said, "or maybe strength was never about power at all. Maybe it was always about love." They sat together in the moonlight, two outcasts who had found each other in the darkness. Neither of them knew what the future would bring. But for the first time, they were not facing it alone. And somewhere deep in the palace watched them through a window. Her silver eyes were cold with hatred. The human had embarrassed her. The human had made her weak sister strong. This could not be allowed to continue. She turned and walked into the shadows, already planning her revenge. 6 months had passed since arrived on Prime. The winter season had come, covering the purple forests in white snow. Inside the palace, fires burned in every room to keep the cold away, and had settled into a peaceful routine. Mornings were for breakfast and conversation. Afternoons were for walking in the gardens or reading in the library. Evenings were for sitting by the fire, talking about everything and nothing. It was almost possible to forget that they were prisoners. Almost possible to forget the war, the hate, the fear. But danger was coming closer every day. Had been watching them for months. She had spies everywhere, servants, guards, even some of the lords who owed her favors. She learned everything about and how they talked, how they laughed, how they looked at each other. It made her sick. "The human has changed her," said to her trusted advisor, a thin named. "She used to be so quiet, so easy to control. Now she speaks up. She defends him. She's becoming dangerous." "Dangerous, my lady?" asked. "She is still the weakest princess." "Exactly. And if the weakest can become strong, what does that say about the rest of us? What does it say about our whole way of life?" Turned to face him. "The empire is built on strength, on power, on the belief that emotions make you weak. But this human, he's proving the opposite. He's showing everyone that kindness can be powerful too. If people start believing that, they might start questioning the empire." Finished. "Yes, and that cannot happen," smiled, but it was not a nice smile. "We need to get rid of them, both of them, make it look like an accident." "What about the peace treaty with Earth?" "The treaty says nothing about protecting one human. If he dies, we simply send for another. Or better yet, we say the humans broke the treaty first and restart the war." Nodded slowly. "When do you want this done?" "Tonight, during the winter festival. Everyone will be distracted by the celebrations. No one will notice two outcasts disappearing." That evening, the palace was alive with music and light. Thousands have gathered to celebrate the longest night of the year. They wore beautiful clothes and danced under floating lanterns. They drank sweet wine and ate rich food, and were not invited to the main celebration. They watched from their window as the crowds danced below. "It's beautiful," said. "I used to love the winter festival when I was a child, before my mother died." "Would you like to dance?" asked. Laughed. "There's no music here." We don't need music." He took her hand and pulled her close. They moved slowly together, making their own rhythm in the silence. "You humans are so strange," whispered. "You find joy in the smallest things." "That's because we know how quickly everything can disappear," replied. "So we learn to treasure every moment." They danced until the moons rose high in the sky, then yawned and said she was tired. They decided to go to bed early. That decision saved their lives. An hour later, the assassins came. There were 4 of them dressed in black, moving like shadows through the palace halls. They had been told the targets would be awake, sitting by the window. Easy kills. But when they entered the room they found and sleeping, the assassins paused. This was unexpected. That moment of hesitation was all needed. Years of military training had taught him to sleep lightly. The moment the door opened, he was awake. He heard the soft footsteps. He sensed the danger. He moved without thinking. Rolled off the bed, grabbing the knife he kept hidden under his pillow. He crashed into the first assassin, knocking him to the ground. The blade found his throat before he could cry out. "Run!" shouted. But there was nowhere to run. 3 more assassins blocked the door. They drew their weapons, long, curved swords that glowed with a faint blue light. "Impressive human," one of them said. "You killed Zin. He was careless. We will not make the same mistake." They attacked together, had only a small knife against 3 swords. He should have died in seconds. But he didn't. Something happened too in that moment. All his pain, all his anger, all his grief, it all came rushing out. He remembered his mother's face as the bombs fell. He remembered his father's last words. He remembered his sister's laughter. They had taken everything from him. They would not take too. Fought like a madman. He was faster than they expected, more fierce than they could understand. He dodged their swords and struck back with his knife. He bit and kicked and screamed. 1 assassin fell, his arm bleeding. Another stumbled back, his face cut. The 3rd tried to run but caught him and broke his neck. It was over in less than 2 minutes. Stood in the middle of the room, covered in blood. His body shook with exhaustion. 3 warriors, trained killers, lay dead around him. Stared at him with wide eyes. "How did you?" "I don't know," he admitted. His voice was rough. "I just couldn't let them hurt you." The noise had attracted guards. They burst into the room and found the scene of death. At first, they pointed their weapons at, but then they saw the assassins' weapons, their black clothes. "These are shadow killers," one guard said. "The Emperor's personal assassins who sent them." The wounded assassin was still alive, barely. Grabbed him and demanded answers. "Who sent you? Who wants us dead?" The assassin laughed, blood dripping from his mouth. "You think you've won? This is just the beginning. The eldest princess will never stop. She will destroy you and restart the war. Humans will burn." He died before he could say more. But it was enough. The eldest princess had tried to kill them. News of the attack spread quickly through the palace. By morning, everyone knew what had happened. A single human had killed 3 of the Empire's best assassins with nothing but a kitchen knife. It seemed impossible. It seemed like a legend. But it was true. The Emperor summoned into the throne room. When they arrived, the entire court was watching. Stood near her father, her face a mask of calm, but could see the fear in her eyes. "Human," the Emperor said, "you killed 3 of my warriors." "They tried to kill your daughter," replied, "and me." "Yes, so I've heard." The Emperor's burning eyes moved too. "I have also heard who sent them." Stepped forward. "Father, surely you don't believe." "Silence." The Emperor's voice was like thunder. "I know you, I know your ambitions, I know your hatred." He turned back to, "You defended my daughter with your life. You defeated enemies that should have destroyed you. Why?" Looked at, then back at the Emperor. "Because she is my wife, because I love her, and I will protect her with everything I have." A gasp went through the crowd. Love, a human loved, it was unthinkable. But looking at them, at the way they stood together, the way they held hands, everyone could see it was true. The Emperor was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he nodded. "Perhaps," he said quietly, "we have underestimated humans. Perhaps we have underestimated many things." He rose from his throne and pointed at. "You will be confined to your chambers. Your actions will be investigated. If you are found guilty of attempted murder, you will be executed." His face went white. "Father, please. Take her away." Guards grabbed and dragged her out of the hall. She screamed and fought, but it was useless. Watched her go. He felt no joy in her downfall, only relief that was safe. For now, the investigation into his crimes took 3 weeks. Every day new evidence appeared. Witnesses came forward. Documents were found. Slowly, the full picture became clear. Had not only planned to kill and she had also been working with generals in the military who wanted to restart the war with Earth. They believed the peace treaty made the Empire look weak. They wanted blood. When the Emperor heard all this, his rage shook the palace walls. "My own daughter," he said, his voice heavy with pain. "My own blood plotting against me, against our people. Was executed on a cold winter morning. Did not watch. Neither did. They stayed in their room, holding each other, trying to understand everything that had happened." "I should feel happy," whispered. "She was cruel to me my whole life, but I just feel sad." "That's because you have a good heart," said. "You don't enjoy other people's suffering, even when they deserve it." "Is that strength or weakness?" "It's what makes you human." He smiled at his own words. "I mean, you know what I mean." Almost laughed. A being called human, my father would be horrified. But the Emperor was changing too. The events of the past weeks had forced him to look at many things differently. He had always believed that strength meant power, that emotions were dangerous, that kindness was for fools. But he had watched his strongest daughter plot murder while his weakest daughter showed more courage than anyone. He had watched a human, a creature he considered barely more than an animal, fight with the heart of a warrior and love with the soul of a poet. One evening, the Emperor called to meet him alone. It was the first time they had spoken privately since arrived on Prime. "Sit," the Emperor said, pointing to a chair. Sat. He was nervous, but he didn't show it. "You have caused me much trouble, human," the Emperor began. "You have made me question things I believed for centuries. You have made my court whisper about change. Some of my advisors think I should have you killed just to restore order." "Will you?" asked calmly. The Emperor studied him. "No, and do you know why?" "Because of the peace treaty." "No, because you showed me something I had forgotten." The old Emperor leaned back in his throne. "When I was young, I believed in love. I believed in kindness. I believed that the heart was as important as the sword, but years of war and politics made me forget. I became cold, hard. I thought that was strength." He looked at with something like respect. "You reminded me of who I used to be. You reminded my whole empire of something we lost long ago. That is why I cannot kill you. That is why I must protect you." "And my daughter," the Emperor's voice softened. "I treated her badly. I ignored her because she reminded me of her mother and her mother reminded me of my own weakness. But she is not weak. She is the strongest of all my children. I see that now." Felt hope rising in his chest. "What happens next?" "That is up to you." The Emperor stood and walked to the window. "The generals who plotted with have been arrested. The war faction in our government has been broken. For the first time in many years, we have a chance for real peace. Peace with Earth. Yes, but more than that, peace with ourselves." He turned to face. "I want you and to be ambassadors, to travel between our worlds, to show both humans and that we can be more than enemies." It was more than had ever dreamed possible. 3 months later and stood on a platform on Earth. The sky above them was blue and clear. The war had the planet, but life was returning. Green grass grew in the fields. Children played in the streets. Hope was alive again. General Park stood before them, older and grayer but smiling. "I never thought I'd see this day," he said. "A princess walking freely on Earth, a human standing beside her, respected by both worlds." "Neither did I," admitted. Held his hand tightly. This was her first time on Earth. She had studied it for years, dreamed about it, but seeing it in person was different. The colors were softer here. The air smelled sweet. And the people, the humans, they looked at her with curiosity, not hatred. "They don't fear me," she whispered too. "They know what you did for us," he replied. "They know you spoke against the war. They know you're different from the others." A little girl ran up to them, holding a flower. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her mother tried to stop her, but she was too fast. "Is it true you're a princess?" the girl asked, looking up at. "Yes," said, kneeling down to the girl's level. "Are you nice?" Smiled, "I try to be." The girl held out the flower. "This is for you. My mom says we should always be nice to nice people." Took the flower with trembling hands. Tears filled her eyes. On her world, no child had ever given her a gift. No child had ever called her nice. "Thank you," she whispered. "This is the most beautiful gift I've ever received." The crowd watched in silence. A princess crying over a simple flower. It was not what they had expected. It was not what anyone had expected. But it was real. That moment was broadcast across both worlds. Billions of humans and watched as a princess and a little girl shared a simple act of kindness. It was a small thing, but sometimes small things can change the universe. In the years that followed and traveled between Earth and Prime, they spoke to councils and courts. They met with leaders and common people. Everywhere they went, they told their story. "We were forced together as a joke," would say. "Two outcasts, two rejects put together to be mocked. But we found something unexpected. We found each other. We found love. We found strength." "And we learned," would add, "that the greatest power in the universe is not weapons or armies. It is the heart. It is the ability to hope when everything seems lost. It is the choice to be kind when everyone expects you to be cruel." Some people laughed at them, some called them fools, but more and more people listened. More and more people began to believe. The peace held. Year after year, humans learned to live together. They traded goods and knowledge. They shared art and music. They discovered that they were not so different after all. And at the center of it all were the human soldier who refused to hate, the alien princess who refused to be cold. Together, they had changed two worlds. One night many years later, they sat on the balcony of their home on Prime. They were older now. His hair was gray, moved more slowly than she used to, but their hands still found each other in the dark. "Do you ever regret it?" asked, "leaving Earth, marrying me?" Laughed, "Never, not for a single moment." Even when they laughed at us, even when they tried to kill us. Even then, he squeezed her hand, "because I found you, and finding you was worth everything." Leaned against him, and they watched the twin moons rise over the purple forests. "What do you think people will remember about us?" she asked, "when we're gone?" Thought for a moment. "I think they'll remember that love is stronger than fear, that hope is stronger than hate, that even in the darkest times, two people can find light in each other. That's a good thing to be remembered for." "Yes," agreed, "it is." They sat together in the moonlight, two souls who had found each other against all odds. Their story had become a legend, but to them, it was simply a love story. The greatest love story either world had ever known. And it all began with a forced wedding and a choice to be kind.